In the crisp, damp autumn of 1776, the entire American Revolution was standing on the absolute brink of total destruction. New York City had fallen into enemy hands, engulfed in a massive wave of fire, smoke, and pure, terrifying chaos. General George Washington's inexperienced Continental troops were forced into a humiliating and frantic retreat across the frozen countryside. Defeated, freezing, and rapidly running out of food, black powder, and basic medical supplies, the army seemed utterly broken. Just across the water, the mighty army of the British Empire appeared completely unstoppable and ready to crush the rebellion once and for all. Standing on the riverbanks, Washington realized that brute force, raw courage, and muskets would no longer be enough to win this war. To survive the winter, he desperately needed eyes, ears, and voice inside the enemy's heavily guarded military headquarters. Yet, in the traditional gentleman's rules of 18th century warfare, intelligence gathering was viewed as a filthy, utterly dishonorable crime. If a soldier was caught acting as a spy, they were given no mercy, no military trial, and no status as a prisoner of war. Instead, they were dragged straight out to the city square, fitted with a coarse hemp rope, and hanged from the gallows until dead. The brutal threat of public execution was usually enough to keep everyday citizens completely quiet, obedient, and paralyzed by fear. Yet, right inside the shadows of enemy-occupied Manhattan, a small, courageous ring of ordinary people decided to take a deadly stand. These were not trained military commanders, hardened soldiers, or wealthy aristocrats looking for personal glory. They were everyday townspeople forced to live dangerous double lives right under the watchful gaze of the British Army. Their covert ranks included a soft-spoken merchant tailor, a clever society coffeehouse owner, a rough longshoreman working the docks, and a brave, enigmatic woman whose identity remains locked in history, known only by her numerical code name, Agent 355. Together, this unlikely group forged an invisible web of espionage across Long Island Sound, forever known as the Culper Spy Ring. Bound by absolute secrecy and the constant threat of the gallows, they operated in total silence, armed only with complex numerical ciphers, invisible chemical ink, and hidden drop boxes scattered across enemy territory. They successfully smuggled high-level British battle plans. This is the incredible, untold story of George Washington's Shadow Network and how their secrets changed the world. To truly understand why Washington created this Shadow Network, we have to go back to a dark morning in September 1776. A young, idealistic American officer named Nathan Hale volunteered for a dangerous mission: gather intelligence behind enemy lines. Hale was brave, intelligent, and deeply devoted to the cause of liberty. But he was also completely untrained in the deadly craft of espionage. He carried no ciphers, used no code names, and hid incriminating notes on parchment paper right inside his own shoes. Within days, British soldiers captured him. He was betrayed, exposed, and dragged before the British military commander, General William Howe. Without a trial, Hale was condemned to hang the very next morning. Standing on the wooden scaffold, he uttered his legendary last words: "I only regret that I have but one life to lose for my country." Hale's tragic death sent shockwaves through the Continental High Command. Washington was heartbroken, but he learned a brutal lesson. Patriotism and raw courage alone were not enough to beat the British Empire. Amateurs got killed. He needed professionals. He needed an invisible system where spies never knew each other's true names, never met in public, and never left a paper trail. Major Benjamin Tallmadge. Tallmadge was a sharp, brilliant 24-year-old cavalry officer who had actually been Nathan Hale's classmate at Yale. Devastated by the execution of his close friend, Tallmadge approached Washington with a revolutionary proposal. "Give me permission," Tallmadge argued, "and I will build a spy ring unlike anything the world has ever seen." Washington gave him full authority and unlimited access to military funds. Tallmadge immediately got to work, establishing the Culper Ring. To ensure total secrecy, Tallmadge created a complex master codebook containing hundreds of numerical ciphers. Under this system, New York City was called code number 727, a letter was 356, an army was 310. Even General George Washington himself was stripped of his famous title and all correspondence. To his secret agents, he was simply known as 711. If a British patrol intercepted a Culper message, all they would see was a meaningless wall of random numbers. Furthermore, Tallmadge insisted on strict compartmentalization. Agents in the field would only communicate with one specific contact. If one person was captured and tortured by the British, they could only compromise a single link, never the whole chain. With the structural rules firmly in place, Tallmadge needed his chief operative inside enemy-occupied Manhattan. He needed a man who could blend in seamlessly. He recruited his childhood friend from Setauket, Long Island, a quiet, reserved man named Robert Townsend. Townsend took on the code name Samuel Culper Jr. On the surface, he was the absolute last person anyone would suspect of espionage. He was a deeply religious Quaker, soft-spoken, and ran a popular dry goods shop and coffee house in downtown Manhattan. Top British military officers, high-ranking loyalists, and prominent society figures frequented Townsend's shop every single day. They laughed, drank tea, and openly discussed British troop movements, naval arrivals, and supply shortages right in front of him. They viewed Townsend as a mild-mannered, obedient merchant who cared about nothing more than making a profit. They had no idea that behind his calm, polite smile, Robert Townsend was memorizing every single detail. Every evening, after locking the heavy wooden doors of his shop, Townsend sat alone in his room by candlelight. He translated his mental notes into numerical codes, writing on thin strips of paper that could be easily swallowed if caught. To push the disguise even further, Townsend bought a financial stake in a pro-British loyalist newspaper. As a society journalist, he had a legitimate excuse to ask British commanders probing questions about war strategy. He was invisible. He was untouchable. But getting the secret intelligence out of occupied Manhattan was where the real nightmare began. British guards stood at every bridge, ferry terminal, and city gate, searching every wagon and traveler. A single mistake meant instant arrest and the gallows. Townsend needed a courier who could ride right past enemy guards unnoticed. He found his courier in Austin Rowe, a tough, courageous tavern keeper from Setauket who rode 55 miles back and forth to Manhattan. Rowe risked his life twice a week, pretending to buy supplies for his tavern while hiding Townsend's secret codes inside his goods. Once Rowe reached Setauket, he hid the messages in a designated field, a secret drop box known only to the Ring. The network was officially operational. The invisible shadow web had been cast. Now, Washington finally had his eyes inside New York. But the danger was about to escalate to a terrifying new level. With the Culper Ring operational, a continuous flow of high-level British intelligence began moving out of Manhattan. But this success brought unprecedented danger, and the Ring's operations soon resembled a high-stakes spy thriller, depending on innovations that are still used in espionage today. To communicate with Washington, Benjamin Tallmadge provided the Ring with a formula for invisible ink, known in the master codebook as stain. Robert Townsend would write seemingly mundane letters, and between the visible lines of ink, he used the stain to write the critical numerical codes containing troop movements and naval battle plans. To the naked eye, it looked like a simple grocery list or family correspondence. The only way the hidden message could be unlocked was by the recipient, Major Tallmadge, applying a specific developer chemical, unlocking the secret code Washington needed to survive. Getting the messages out of Manhattan required passing through heavy British checkpoints, demanding a second system of brilliant signals. This critical link in the chain was managed by Abraham Woodhull in Setauket and his secret accomplice, Anna Strong. Strong managed a small farm on a high coastal bluff overlooking the bay. When a coded message arrived in Setauket, Strong would signal Caleb Brewster's whaleboat across the Long Island Sound using a simple clothesline that was visible from the water. In full view of British patrols, Strong hung a black petticoat, a normal piece of 18th century clothing, on her line. The specific arrangement of white handkerchiefs alongside the black petticoat told Caleb Brewster exactly which secret cove was safe to perform the night drop. This analog system of visual signals allowed ordinary citizens to outsmart the British Navy daily. However, despite these layers of security, the psychological strain on these quiet heroes was staggering. Robert Townsend lived every day in sheer terror. His dry goods shop was constantly filled with laughing, arrogant redcoat officers. At any moment, a slip of the tongue, a nervous glance, or an accidentally discovered piece of paper would result in an immediate execution. To navigate this extreme paranoia, Tallmadge successfully pushed for the recruitment of an agent so deep in British high society that they were nearly untouchable. Historians to this day argue over the true identity of the woman known only in correspondence as Agent 355. Some believe she was a loyalist high society woman who hated the British occupation. Others suggest she may have even been an actress. Whoever she was, Agent 355 was brilliant at gathering pillow talk from high-ranking British commanders. She provided the Ring with critical intelligence from deep within British High Command, but the entire operation was about to face its deadliest test yet. In July 1780, the Ring learned of a plot that would have lost the entire war. British forces had discovered the arrival of French troops in Newport, and were preparing a surprise massive naval invasion to crush them before they could even land. Townsend got the message out of New York, but for the entire chain to work, the intelligence had to reach Washington in mere days. If they failed, the French-American alliance would be destroyed, and the revolution would be over. The shadows were about to explode into open conflict. Working in a frantic race against the clock, Austin Roe rode over 110 miles through hostile territory to deliver Townsend's warning to Tallmadge. Tallmadge rushed the dispatch to Washington, who executed a brilliant piece of disinformation. Washington deliberately allowed fake march orders to fall into British hands, tricking General Clinton into believing the Continental Army was preparing an immediate assault on New York City. Terrified of losing Manhattan, Clinton canceled the naval invasion of Newport at the last possible second. The French army was saved, the alliance held firm, and the Culper Ring had just prevented the total collapse of the American Revolution. By late 1780, the American Revolution was on a razor's edge, pushed to the brink by exhaustion, military stalemate, and financial ruin. Yet the Culper Ring's greatest challenge was about to strike from inside General Washington's innermost circle. General Benedict Arnold, one of America's most celebrated battlefield heroes, had secretly turned traitor, striking a deal with British intelligence chief Major John Andre to surrender the key stronghold of West Point for £20,000. While Arnold plotted in secret, it was Robert Townsend's keen eye in Manhattan that caught the first whispers of a massive high-level British conspiracy. Townsend rapidly funneled the cryptic intelligence to Major Benjamin Tallmadge, setting off a desperate race against time. The conspiracy collapsed when American militia intercepted Major John Andre in Westchester, finding West Point's defense plans hidden inside his boots. Recognizing the signature handwriting and coded references, Tallmadge immediately realized the magnitude of the treason. Though Arnold narrowly escaped aboard a British warship, Andre was captured, tried, and executed as a spy. In the chaotic aftermath, British counterintelligence launched a ruthless crackdown in Manhattan, hunting down every suspected rebel sympathizer. Tragically, Agent 355 was caught in the dragnet and imprisoned on the notorious British prison ship HMS Jersey, where she later perished. Despite the heavy loss and overwhelming danger, the remaining members of the Ring held their ground, refusing to break under intense British interrogation. By the summer of 1781, the war's climax was taking shape in Virginia, where British General Cornwallis had fortified his position at Yorktown. But Cornwallis was entirely dependent on the British Royal Navy for supplies, reinforcements, and an escape route by sea. Operating right under the noses of British naval officers at his Manhattan coffeehouse, Robert Townsend overheard crucial conversations regarding Royal Navy fleet deployments. He learned that British Admiral Thomas Graves was miscalculating the whereabouts of the French fleet under Admiral de Grasse. Townsend discovered that de Grasse was not heading for New York as the British anticipated, but was sailing directly for the Chesapeake Bay with 30 French warships. Recognizing that this was the fatal trap Washington needed, Townsend meticulously coded the naval intelligence detailing British ship counts, artillery numbers, and departure timelines. He passed the coded dispatch to Austin Roe, who rode at breakneck speed across Long Island. Armed with Townsend's precise intelligence, Washington made a bold, historic gamble. He left a phantom force behind to fake an imminent attack on Manhattan, while secretly marching the main Franco-American army hundreds of miles south to Virginia. When the French fleet arrived in the Chesapeake Bay, they sealed off the sea routes, setting up the historic Battle of the Capes and trapping Cornwallis at Yorktown. Townsend's quiet ink had effectively laid the groundwork for the fall of the British Empire in America. Supported by the French fleet, Washington executed a decisive siege, forcing the surrender of the main British army and effectively winning the Revolutionary War. When the victorious Continental Army finally marched back into a liberated New York City in November 1783, George Washington personally rode to Setauket. There, behind closed doors, he quietly thanked the ordinary citizens who had risked everything in the shadows to preserve their safety and humble lives. Their real names were kept secret for over 150 years. Through raw courage, brilliant ciphers, and unwavering dedication, these invisible heroes proved that the ultimate weapon of liberty wasn't found on the battlefield, but in the power of truth, sacrifice, and silence. History is full of hidden choices. Subscribe to the Morrow Archive Chronicles and never miss a chapter.